This is a Max Yao Leadership Podcast.
You know this about me. I'm passionate about people. I'm passionate about relationships. I think people for us, certainly at CVS Health, because we're a service company, they differentiate. They make us great or not great. We could have the best strategy. We could have the best resources. But if our people aren't on board and excited and representing us in the way that we need them to, we're not going to be the best that we can be. As a leader, personally, is really important. Take the time to think about what really matters for you, what you want to stand for. And then, at the end of every day, just take a minute and say, did I do that? And if I didn't, because you won't, every day you won't have done what you wanted to do perfectly. And think about, how am I staying true to what I want to be? And how am I continuing to improve in a way that makes me better, but much more importantly, the people that I have the opportunity to influence better. 7 years ago, I had a birthday and went to Italy to celebrate my birthday. And when I came back, I had a mammogram scheduled, and I was really tempted to cancel it because I had been out of the office for a few days, and we all know how that is. And so I thought, my first instinct was automatically, I need to move this. Like, I can't, not today. I didn't even realize the scheduling, and I was like, looked at the calendar and I thought, not today, I'm going to cancel it. And for some reason I didn't. I went to the mammogram. Very quickly I learned I needed to have a biopsy, and very quickly I learned it was breast cancer.
My guest today is one of the most dedicated and caring leaders I know. Laurie Havanec is an innovative leader who partners with executive teams to build strategic, people-focused human resource strategies. She is an experienced HR professional who has worked across all human resources functions and currently serves as Executive Vice President and Chief People Officer at CVS Health, one of the largest companies in the world. With a workforce of 300,000 diverse and talented employees across the United States, CVS Health is a different kind of healthcare company whose purpose is centered around, and I quote, bringing our heart to every moment of your health, end quote. Prior to CVS, Laurie was Executive Vice President and Chief People Officer at Otis Elevator, the world's leading elevator and escalator company. Before joining Otis, Laurie served as Corporate Vice President at United Technologies Corporation and was also a senior HR leader at Aetna. Without further ado, let's welcome Laurie Havanec. Welcome, Laurie, to our show.
Thanks so much, Max. I'm absolutely delighted to join you for a conversation today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is one that I was particularly looking forward to because, when I think about leadership, I think Laurie, because of the way you connect with people. And I think it's really going to be a great conversation. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Truly a pleasure, and thank you. You made my day already.
So, Laurie, you lead today human resource for one of the largest company in the world, CVS Health, which is about 300 billion in revenue and has 300,000 employees across the US. And CVS, as I said, is a very large company, ranked number 4 on the Fortune 100. What's in your upbringing, you'll say, prepared you for what for many people is a dream job?
Thanks, Max. I think so much of it is the experiences that you have as you move throughout the course of your career. And I will tell you, as you well know, I started my career at United Technologies, and I actually started my career as a lawyer. I went back to law school after I had both of my boys, and really wanted to get into a corporate environment and practice law. And I was fortunate enough to do that at United Technologies. And one of the things when I was interviewing for jobs out of law school, the law firms were constantly asking, what do you want to specialize in? United Technologies recruited with a very different value prop. They said, we don't want our lawyers to specialize. We want our lawyers to move around our businesses and to move around different areas of the law so that we can create general counsel candidates who know when to bring in deep external help as resources. And that was very attractive to me. I get bored if I stay in one space too long. And so I love that concept. So I will tell you, I didn't stay in legal, and that wasn't planned at UT, but they did very much keep that commitment, and they were very intentional about moving talent around between our different companies, between different areas of law initially, and then HR when I moved into the HR function. And I think that's probably the most important thing that you can do to get ready, is get as many experiences, and I call them lenses, that you can use by moving around and growing. And the one piece of advice I would have is do it quickly, do it early in career if you can. Don't start when you're at the senior levels. I started a little bit later, and so those moves are higher risk. But early in career, really, every 2 to 3 years, think about, what should I be doing to further develop those lenses in how I see things and broaden my perspective. So I think that's probably the most important.
That's terrific. And you touched on that. There's some choices that you need to make, and but then you need to choose between going to the courtroom or going to corporate. How did you make that decision? Why did you choose the corporate path instead of practice, for example?
It's so funny, Max, because I will tell you, when I was in law school, I had in my head, I wanted to work in a corporate environment. I'm pretty business minded, and I've actually had a number of business leaders say, you should run a business. You're really, you're very business focused. So I kind of knew that about myself. So I had a leaning towards corporate law, but in all honesty, the law school and my advisors at the law school kept pushing me towards a law firm. Work at a law firm first and then go into a corporate job. And so I ended up interviewing in law firms and in corporations, ended up with a lot of that input from my advisors at the law school, accepting my important internship at a law firm, which was a great learning experience. It was a really rich learning experience, and I'm glad I had it. And halfway through the summer, I said to myself, like, what am I doing? I knew what I wanted. I wanted to be in a corporate environment. I had actually turned down an internship with United Technologies to take one at the law firm. And I made the decision at that point, no, I'm going to go back to UT and tell them, I did get an offer for the firm. I said, I'll turn that down. I won't interview on campus. I would love to come there. And I went there. And I think I just knew about myself that that kind of business lens is one that's fun and attractive and compelling for me. And so I knew that about myself, and it's proven to be very true. I did have a great experience at the firm, and really got that courtroom. I got to go into the courtroom and be with a partner when we did a summary judgment motion that I wrote. So I mean, really wonderful experience, but it was clear to me, like, this is just not the best fit for what I want to do.
Yeah, I see, absolutely. And I think there's definitely a pull for you for the corporate environment, but there's also a pull for people. And
Yes.
I see that with the posts that you make on LinkedIn, and always at this time of the year, you tell your story and you encourage people around taking the mammogram. Would you share your story around being a cancer survivor?
Yeah, sure. Max, for me, I'm actually a 2-time cancer survivor. When my oldest son was just 2 years old, I found some lumps in my neck. And it was a long time ago, and they knew it probably wasn't good, but they didn't know what kind of cancer it was. So I had about a 6-week period where, the prognosis was unclear and could have been pretty bad. And I didn't deal well at that time with that. I kept looking at this 2-year-old, and all I could think was, I won't see what he becomes. He won't know me. And I got really wound up focusing on, how do I make him know me? How do I get to know him? And I wasn't particularly productive during that time. When I came out of my surgery, the surgeon told me right away it was a papillary cancer, which is a type of thyroid cancer, which, while it had spread into my lymph nodes, that was a type of cancer that didn't spread through the blood. So the prognosis was very, very positive. And at that moment, I was like, okay, I'm going to live this life differently, and I'm going to live this life with no regrets, and I'm going to do everything I thought I wanted to do, and I'm going to make sure I value every moment and every day. And it was such an important um, turning point for me, and that's what made me go back to law school, in all honesty, was that incident. And then, interestingly, when I applied to law school and got in, I found out I was pregnant with Zach, my second son. And so I actually started law school with a 4-year-old and a 6-week-old, but was just really passionate about, I'm going to do this, and this is the way I'm going to live my life. And it worked for me really well. When I was 7 years ago, I had a birthday and went to Italy to celebrate my birthday. And when I came back, I had a mammogram scheduled, and I was really tempted to cancel it because I had been out of the office for a few days, and we all know how that is. And so I thought, my first instinct was automatically, I need to move this. Like, I can't, not today. I didn't even realize the scheduling. And I was like, looked at the calendar and I thought, not today, I'm going to cancel it. And for some reason, I didn't. I went to the mammogram. Very quickly, I learned I needed to have a biopsy, and very quickly I learned it was breast cancer. And the one thing I can tell you, that's a positive for me, is my second experience with cancer. I brought all of that learning from my first experience. So I was very positive. I was very committed. Like, I've got this. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to conquer all of this. And I brought with me to that second experience, some of the strength that I didn't have the first time around. But I feel passionately that far too many women like me do just really quickly react and say, let me cancel that, I can move it. And, if I had moved that appointment, I think my prognosis in terms of the cancer diagnosis would have been very different. So I feel like if I have people write me notes and call me and say, Laurie, I got my mammogram, and I either found something that we caught quickly, or I'm fine. And I did it because I heard your message. And that is what makes me want and need to share it as much as I can.
I know, that's so powerful. And I'm sure, every year there's out there at least one person whose life is changed by your message. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thanks, Max.
And I said you have a drawn to people, and we know how people are central to organization success, and I think when you got appointed at CVS, you said, and I quote, "Business don't create value, people do," which I found very powerful. And also your product at CVS is all around people, is about people's health. Can you share with us, what does it mean for you as a chief people officer to look after people?
Yeah, I mean, Max, first of all, you said it at the beginning, this about me. I'm passionate about people. I'm passionate about relationships. I think people for us, certainly at CVS Health, because we're a service company, they differentiate, they make us great or not great. We could have the best strategy, we could have the best resources, but if our people aren't on board and excited and representing us in the way that we need them to, we're not going to be the best that we can be. So when Karen, who's our CEO, called to try and get me to come to CVS, and we ultimately agreed I would come, I replaced someone who had a CHRO title, Chief Human Resources title. And I said, Karen, one of the things that really matters to me is changing that title to Chief People Officer, because I do think that speaks volumes to the value of the job, the value of our people, the messaging to our people. And I really believe, particularly at CVS, and I'm almost 2 years in now, that purpose and people are our competitive advantage. And we've been really thoughtful about how do we design our culture to focus on that. And, we asked our colleagues, people say to me often, Laurie, do you own culture? And I'm like, no, I don't own culture. I can be a steward for culture. I can help us think about how to create the culture, but we all own culture, and our leadership team certainly owns the culture. So when we were creating the behaviors that we thought would be important to reflect our culture, my HR team didn't do that. We gathered people from across the organization and created our purpose statement and our behaviors. And that made it much more powerful because it was a voice of our people. And interestingly, our purpose statement, which is we bring our heart to every moment of your health, was initially we bring heart to every moment of your health. And one of our pharmacists in one of our stores reached out to us and said, I think it should be our heart to every moment of your health, and it makes it even more compelling. And we immediately changed it, and her name was Kelly, and I was like, God, Kelly, she said, I can't believe you're editing your purpose statement to reflect my comments. And I said, your comments make it so much better. So, I think that is really, really important. I think, it creates for us kind of a common understanding across such a large workforce about what we expect of our people. And we have over 1 million recognitions that were sent this year on, our colleagues demonstrating one of our hard at work behaviors. And we've really, kind of focused on how do we make sure we thank people and we recognize people when we're doing the things that we think and we've defined as really important. Spoke at our Leadership Live conference to our senior leadership team just a couple months ago. And I said, while that's really great and really important, culturally, what's even more important is making sure that you have conversations when people aren't demonstrating our leadership behaviors, because people look up at the leadership of the organization, and we all, have moments where we trip, and we need to make sure. And for what we found, the data shows that for every one recognition, that you need 5 recognition moments to offset one moment where someone's not demonstrating the behaviors and you don't correct that. So we're really focusing on balancing, not just recognizing the positive, but also in the right setting, in the right way, having conversations with our leaders when they're not demonstrating the behaviors.
Wow, that's so powerful. And you said something that's very important, because I've noticed that when we have conversation around culture and promoting the cultural behavior, we tend to turn to the HR team and say, oh, HR, you own this topic, but in fact, it's owned to everyone. And I was at the training recently where they presented what they call the profit chain. And at the end, you have financial performance, which to me is very important as a CFO. But then to get that financial performance, you need to have your customers to be happy with you. So you need customers to generate that. And to have happy customers, you need to have engaged employees. So it's to really start with the employees and do everything around engaged employees. So thank you for sharing that.
We've been really focused the past 2 years since Karen joined as our CEO on customer centricity, because when you think about healthcare, it's really important that you're listening, you're hearing, you're reacting to what the customers need. But also we added just last year, right alongside that customer centricity, our colleague centricity, because we recognize you can't get to customer centricity without colleague centricity and colleagues feeling like they're empowered and they're working somewhere that they're excited and inspired to be. So I couldn't agree more with your comments.
No, that's clear. Now, colleagues around the world and people in general are really going through some difficult time. We have a war in Europe. We have the rising interest rate and people are feeling it in their pocket. What would you say for leaders in general are the most pressing challenge these days?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I've been around for a long time, Max, and I will say in my own experience, it's far and away the most unsettled time that I've seen. Uncertain, unsettled, at Thayer, when we went as a leadership team, we talked about VUCA environments, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I think we're smack in the middle of that in a way that none of us could ever have imagined. And so I think really one of the most important things that leaders have to do is focus on being ready to embrace change, embrace transformation, and be agile enough to address the moment we're in. And understand that one thing we definitely cannot count on is in this world right now is predictability. We're going to need to make quick decisions, and we're not always going to have all of the data that we would love to have in order to make that. And a couple things I would share just in terms of, the 2022 Global Risk Report coming out of the World Economic Forum is that, right now that report says that only 16% of leaders feel positive and optimistic about the outlook for the world, and just 11% believe that the global recovery is going to accelerate. And so that means we need to be ready to pivot. When we talk about return to the workplace at CVS, every time I address our colleagues, I say, the only thing I know about return to the workplace is where we start and where we end won't be the same place. I'm positive we're not going, and we've already pivoted a couple of times. We're not going to get it right at first. And a lot of what we need to know to get there hasn't even happened yet. And so, that need for perfection, that need to have all the data and not make a decision until everything is buttoned up, we got to throw that out the window and, start a journey. And I think that change management is a huge piece of that, and taking our colleagues on that journey with us so that we tell them, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, here's how we're making decisions, and here's how we're going to make decisions to pivot based on what we hear from all of you. And I think that communication and change management will be absolutely positively critical in this world.
No, absolutely, you're right. And you talked about the need to pivot, and I think you're right there. I think I read in one of your recent reports at CVS that when you look at the health industry in general, there is a dip in trust, and that's what's come from some of those surveys. What are you doing to rebuild that trust from your customers and people in general?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think all of us can point to times where they've interacted with the healthcare system and the experience has been less than ideal. I think the most important critical step in terms of reestablishing trust or creating trust, I think it's almost even creating trust, although I'll give you some data in a minute about, how it's eroding, but is listening. I mean, it really is kind of making sure that we're not presuming we know what the answer is, that we're listening to our customers and hearing what's working and what's not. So, we need to make sure that we're finding ways to get feedback very consistently from our customers. We have more than 16 million pieces of customer feedback that we get every year. And that's some of the most important information that our company gets. And we have a team of consumer experience champions that really kind of take a look at the data, take a look across the enterprise, and share, progress and best practices, but also, as importantly, places where we really need to look at pivoting and making some change. And, I alluded to it just a second ago, Max, but, what the 2022 Health Trends report that we issued shows is that Americans trust the healthcare system less now than they did in the past. They trusted the healthcare system at a 73% level in 1966 and 44% in 2021. And if you think about the advances in healthcare and all the medical work and research and opportunities that have been created, that's pretty disturbing.
No, absolutely. And it's at the same time something that we recognize that we need more. And at the same time, there's this deep in trust that people, maybe because people want to trust more, and it's about how to reestablish that.
I think trust is really, really important in terms of healthcare. And, we do have data that shows that trust is, people who trust the system are more likely to be vaccinated. They're more likely to agree with public health measures. They're more likely to have a recent checkup, which is so important in terms of early detection. So building that trust in terms of outcomes, which is most important, but also in terms of costs and burdening the system is going to be absolutely essential for us to do what we want to do in terms of our strategic agenda.
There's a lot of innovations going on at the moment, and the challenge will be to have employees keeping up the pace. I'm talking about my own experience. I see our HR team bring a lot of new technologies and innovating on the processes, but I'm probably old school, like to have my HR BP always turning to them. But in fact, there's a lot of things that can be done automatically, so that you really take the value of the HR team beyond just processing data.
Yeah, I mean, what I want to do in HR, you're exactly right, Max. What I want to do is elevate the work that my HR team is doing, right? Work that is transactional, that is repeatable, that can be done more quickly with technology. I want to put that with technology. I think those, you know me, these HR business partner roles are so very important. And those are the roles where you want strategy and relationships and, have the tough conversations and have the right conversations. And I think when you can free up some space for the HR talent to do more of that, the function is elevated in a way that's really important. The quality work is elevated and the outcomes are better. So I couldn't agree more.
Very good. This podcast is about leadership, and it's for corporate executives and entrepreneurs who want to grow in their leadership skills. What is your definition of leadership?
Max, I will tell you that when I was at UT in the talent role, I was asked to go with the Pratt & Whitney team to Thayer, which is on the West Point campus, and it's a leadership program that Pratt & Whitney was using, and evaluate it for broader applicability across UT. And I will say that was one of the most impactful programs that I've attended. We all go to lots of leadership programs. One of the things they had us do at Thayer that was hard, but incredibly important and something I carry with me every day as I lead, was create my own leadership philosophy. And, we were being taught by a 4-star General Reimer, who, with all of us, when we think about how hard our jobs are and how hard the decisions we have to make every day, when we're listening to a 4-star General talk about the types of decisions that he's making, which impact the lives of human beings day in and day out, you realize, what we do is hard, but it could be a lot harder. And you also, he taught us why having this leadership philosophy is so important. And he challenged us to make it short enough so that you can remember it, you can talk about it often, you can ask for feedback on it, and you can share it consistently with your team, with your peers, with your boss, and so that people know what you stand for. So for me, and the first time I wrote mine, because I'm a lawyer, it was like 12 bullets with, a lot in it that I could never remember. And General Reimer said, no, you got to make it 4 or 3 or 5, but not 10. And it should reflect who you are as a person and who you are as a leader, personally and professionally. So for me, my experiences and how my life was transformed by these 2 cancer experiences kind of plays into all of that. So my 4 leadership principles, and my team knows it. Johanna, my chief of staff, could probably recite it better than me. Number 1 is do the right thing, especially when it's hard. People always do the right thing when it's easy. It's easy to do the right thing when it's easy. It's very hard to do the right thing when it's hard. And too often we're tempted to just let it go. And that matters. So, that's 1. 2, and I mean, I think you know this about me, relentlessly build relationships of trust, respect, and candor, sideways, down, and up. So for me, people focus a lot, and we need to, on interacting with our boss. That's important. But in the end, what's going to make you most successful, most engaged, and most proud of what you do is making sure those relationships with your peers and with your team are every bit, if not more important than that managing up that everyone does. The third one is, hire people who are better than you, empower them, hold them accountable, give constant feedback. That's a gift. And then watch them soar, which is a joy. And finally, this one is really about me personally and professionally. Be the best you can be every day. I look at every day personally as like a beautiful extra day that I'm on this planet. I think we need to be the best we can in our personal and our professional lives every day. And to me, that means celebrating successes, moving quickly and taking some reasonable risks, particularly in the environment that we're in, and learning and adapting from your mistakes and not being afraid to make them, to own them, and to learn from them. So for
Wow,
me, that's my leadership philosophy.
that's so powerful. I've been taking notes. That's why I like to do these podcasts, because I learn so much from leaders like you. So do the right thing, especially when it's hard. Relentlessly build relationship, empower others, and be the best every day.
It's easy.
Excellent. So how do you go about doing that every day at CVS? What's your strategy to develop leaders?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of developing leaders, I bring a lot, of, kind of how I was developed, which I value tremendously. So we spend a lot of time, really focused on, creating mobility opportunities, looking at how do we develop people experientially in ways, we try to make sure our colleagues understand how to build relationships. We talk a ton about sponsorship, and I was fortunate enough very early in my career, before the word was used in the way that it is, to have a sponsor who affected me profoundly. And so people often say to me, how do we get sponsors for, this person or that? And I'm like, you don't get sponsors for people. People get sponsors by being exposed to leadership, and then having leadership being willing to take reasonable risks and bet their career on these people. And so we look to find sponsorship opportunities. We try and outline career paths. We have the equivalent of 3 Fortune 50 businesses. So and they're related. So we have a huge opportunity to move our talent across our 3 businesses to give them, a career with one company. And we did that well, I think, at UT as well, so that people can stay and leverage the relationships they've built, the reputation that they've created for themselves, but be learning very, very different work. For me personally, Max, every time I moved, and I moved a lot in my career, in the first 6 months, I'm like, what have I done? This is hard. I don't think I can, I don't feel like I'm as effective as I was, just 6 months ago in a job that I knew really well. And how do I create that value quickly? And at the end of a year, I always look back and say, wow, I could not have forced myself to learn that much that quickly without making this change. So I think we really try and create career paths and educate our teams about how to follow those paths and move across our businesses. I think we focus, we have a talent team that we've created at our executive leadership level, where we talk about talent, that we make sure that we as a leadership team are being exposed to talent that we should get to know. When Karen and I are out in the field together, we have lunches with our high potential talent, which we both would say is the high spot of our day. And we get to know people, and it's wonderful because they write us, they stay in touch with us, and we learn from it. And so I think really just having visibility, commitment, lots of communication about ways to grow in the organization and making it easy is what's important. And by no means, Max, are we perfect there. We have lots to continue to do.
No, absolutely. And I want to come back to, I think you are right, giving opportunity to people to do different things. And over the years, I've seen a lot of examples of really bright, talented leaders who get promoted very quickly through the ranks. And then, the transition doesn't go well, and they end up, losing their job or have their career interrupted. Now, you have moved through 5 very large HR roles over the past 10 years, and you seem to have been, that looks like you found the secrets for a successful leadership transition. Would you mind sharing with us what that is?
First of all, it's about relationships. And I will tell you, it was easy for me at the company I grew up with to move once I moved once or twice, it was easy for me to move across businesses because people knew who I was. They knew they could count on me. Knew what they could expect from me. So when I left UT and went to Aetna several years ago, I realized it was very important to recreate those, kind of those expectations, what people know who I am, what they can expect, and rebuild that trust, with a new set of people. And so every time I move, the first thing I do is try and, get out there and build relationships with people that I need to know and that I want to know, and that they can know me and trust me and know what to expect from me. I think that's really, really important every time you move. And when I interview people, I always ask people about what's your first 90 days going to look like. And if they don't say out there, listening, we call it listening tours here at CVS, but really being, as expansive as they can in those first 90 days, understanding points of view, understanding strengths and opportunities, building those relationships. It's so important. And those first 90 days in those jobs are usually the only time that you really have that little safety net to do it. And if you miss the window, it's very hard to be successful. So for me, it's all about making sure when I was at Sikorsky, my first CHRO job was at Sikorsky, and I was like, I know nothing. I have an engineering son. I know nothing about how helicopters fly. I don't know how the TV picture gets into my TV screen, and I don't want to. So when I got there and I was on the leadership team and we were having meetings and we were talking about all of the operational issues, I went and found an engineer and I said, I want to meet with you once a week, and I want you to teach me like the physics, the anatomy of helicopters, how they fly, so that when I'm in these leadership meetings, number one, I understand what's being said. And number two, the president of that company said to me, I want 50% of your job to be running HR and 50% of your job to be running the company and asking non-HR leadership questions, which was the best thing any leader ever said to me. And so I felt to do that, I needed to really get that technical knowledge. So, taking those early days and really making sure you're creating the relationship and you're creating the foundation on the business. And acronyms, tell people when you don't know what an acronym stands for, tell them, don't just presume. Like I used to just kind of in my head figure out, oh, this is what this acronym stands for. About 3% of the time I was right. And if you put the wrong acronym in a sentence, it's not a good thing. So those are
so powerful. I wish we had all day long to continue the conversation, Laurie. It's so powerful. Thank you very much. And as we get to the end of our conversation here today, there's one question I like to ask my guests, which is, you participate to a lot of interviews, you get interviewed a lot, you have a lot of interactions. What is one question that you wish people will ask you? What's one question you wish I would have asked you today, and how would you answer that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, that's a really predictable one for me, Max, because when I interview people, I always, and people come back to me and talk to me, I say, talk to me about the fingerprints that you've left on an organization. And I define fingerprints as something that is strategic and transformational that endures over time. And so I find that I was asked once in an interview, if I could only ask one question, what would it be? And I said, that is what it would be. And it's because it tells you a lot about the person, both in terms of what they value, but then also how they operationalize what they value. And so fingerprints is the question, I always go to, and I've made a lot of decisions on hiring around the fingerprints question. And for me, in terms of fingerprints, it's when I leave behind, it's the culture and the talent that is in place, the quality of the talent and the state of the culture that is the fingerprint that I'm most proud of. So at Otis, for instance, we had done a tremendous amount of work on culture, and a lot of it began before I joined as the head of human resources. When Karen asked me to take the job here at CVS Health, she said to me, and Karen knows because I had worked with her before, she said, Laurie, she was taking on the CEO role. She said, the two fingerprints I want to leave when I'm gone are around leadership and culture. And I said, Karen, that makes it impossible for me to say no to this job, because if I have a CEO who's completely aligned with what I see as important and distinguishing in terms of our ability to be successful transforming this company, who could ask for anything more?
So powerful. And I can add one additional fingerprint you left behind at Otis, Laurie, and that's one conversation we had once after a very difficult meeting that I had with a leader who did not probably behave perfectly well, but you took it so personally and you were able to turn the situation around for me. And I think that's touching point will stayed with me till this day.
Well, Max, I remember that. And the one thing I would say, and I've tried, this is one of my learnings, I always try to hold myself, like, pay it forward, like one day do the same thing, because it matters. Like in those tough moments, it really matters to people. So thank you for remembering. I remember as well. And thank you.
So what would be 3 books that you recommend to our audience and why?
So I'm going to give you 2 that are, are related to work, and one that's fiction, but that just, I really, it was a hard book to read, but I enjoyed it. I learned a lot from it, and it's impactful to me. The 2 that I'd recommend that are work related, one is from Becky Halstead, who's a general, and she was an instructor. We brought the CVS leadership team to there as well, and she worked with us, and it's called 24/7, The First Person You Must Lead Is You. And it's a great account of an amazing, she's one of the earliest females to graduate from West Point. She rose to a general position. She had some really amazing and incredibly challenging jobs. And she just shares in a very transparent and open way, her learnings and mistakes that she made. And, it's an easy read. It's incredibly powerful. It goes back in my mind to the point of, you need to not be afraid to acknowledge that you're going to make mistakes. We all do. The most important thing we do is learn from them and develop kind of a leadership style that's reflective of all those learnings that we have. The second one is a book by this guy whose name is Eric Harkins, who we had joined one of our CVS meetings. And his book, it's a really quick read. You can read it in an hour or 2. I wish I had written it. When I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I would say. It's a fast read. It's called Great Leaders Make Sure Monday Morning Doesn't Suck. And it's, think about the rough jobs that we've had that haven't been fun, and Sunday nights, how you feel. And it's a really simple, very thoughtful, very quick read that helps leaders think about, how do you make sure Monday mornings don't suck? And Monday mornings not sucking is really important in this world. And then finally, the fiction book is The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseins. And it's really about life-defining events, throughout the course of your life, and how they define who you become as a human being. And the book is hard because some of those life-defining events in this story are really, much harder, much sadder than the things I've dealt with. But they really, the book is written in a way that caused me to think a lot about what are those events in my life, and how do I make sure every day that I'm using those to make me a better person and a better leader.
Wow, that's so powerful. I'm going to order all these 3 books immediately. So powerful insight I'm sure we can get from there. What will be your final message to our audience today as we conclude the interview?
I think that knowing who you are as a leader personally is really important. Take the time to think about what really matters for you, what you want to stand for. And then, at the end of every day, just take a minute and say, did I do that? And if I didn't, because you won't, every day you won't have done what you wanted to do perfectly. And think about, how am I staying true to what I want to be? And how am I continuing to improve in a way that makes me better, but much more importantly, the people that I have the opportunity to influence better. And then the second piece, I think I said it before, Max, but it's really important. Pay it forward. I look at my own career and I think about people that have taken risks on me. And the first person that took a risk on me, I talked about him before. And when he retired, I was like, hey, Bill, I can't even believe, again, never use sponsor. It wasn't a word yet in this context, but I said, I can't even believe how grateful I am, how much I owe you, how many risks I took on you. And what he said to me, I'll never forget, which is, I never took a risk on you, Laurie. I was absolutely certain you could do every single job I put you in. And think about what, for me, how valuable that was. I wasn't certain for sure when he put me in those jobs. He was right. And he surrounded me with the resources and the support to allow me to be successful and pay that forward.
Wow. Thank you very much. That's so powerful. Always pay forward and develop others as leaders.
Thanks so much, Max. I can't tell you how much I really, truly have enjoyed this conversation today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. This was the Max Yao Leadership Podcast. Thank you for joining us. To listen to future episodes, you can subscribe on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. Until next time, keep being the leader everybody trusts and respects.